Hi guys, ShinoSeven here. So I had this incredible opportunity come my way. Ryan Farmer, which is a designer of a board game that is currently on Kickstarter called Encounters Shattered Wastes, and he contacted me because he wanted me to do a kind of playthrough on stream of the game itself on Tabletop Simulator and see like if it could kind of help out this Kickstarter and stuff. And we actually played it, and it was fantastic. And I kind of decided to do more than just a playthrough. We decided to kind of like split it up and do an interview and then an actual playthrough of one of the bosses you can fight in the game. And yeah, it was a blast. In this first video here is going to be the interview, and then I'll release a second video, which is going to be the actual playthrough of the game. And yeah, you'll see in the interview section we talk about various stretch goals that had not been reached at that time, but now they have been reached. And I'm going to put a link in the description below of the Kickstarter page if you guys want to grab the game for yourself. I myself got the Deluxe Edition. Ryan actually didn't give me a free copy of the game. I decided to buy it because I really believe in the project and I really enjoy it. And I'll also put in a link for the Steam Workshop version of the game, so you can play for yourself on Tabletop Simulator for free. So that's all going to be in the description below. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this, and please consider participating in the Kickstarter. There's some really cool stuff in there, and in the interview itself, Ryan actually kind of teases potential kind of maybe not necessarily a sequel, but like other project that he's kind of thinking about for this universe. So yeah, check it out. So Ryan, hey, like are we finally talking like like in person? Well, I mean, in person ish.
I mean, as close as we can, right? It's like you're
Yeah,
next to me.
yeah, exactly. So except I don't see your face. You're kind of like a ghost right now. Like just,
It's true. I'm
talking
your
in my
conscience.
ear. Oh yeah, exactly. You're like my Jiminy Cricket. It's perfect.
That's right.
I love it. It's awesome. So
I am so excited to.
I am
thank you
actually
so much for having me on.
super excited. And no, dude, my pleasure. It's gonna be great. I'm actually super excited too. I was talking about that with like my girlfriend a lot, and I've been like watching. I didn't want to watch too much of the playthroughs and stuff, like, because I didn't want to know like all like literally all the rules like backwards and forwards, because like I thought that maybe you like, at least for the first game, you might like just explain the rules as we go.
Of course.
So so that way, like, I can actually like ask you questions and stuff, and keep it interesting, and not having you just like read all the rules basically.
Yeah.
And but also like I there are still some rules that I'm not too sure about, so we'll be able to kind of touch up on that, and that makes me both curious and excited. And yeah, I thought maybe we could like start by talking about like the Kickstarter, maybe, so people can actually see the game and like what it looks like and stuff. So I'll just swap us out from this window to another one, and I'm hoping that you're still going to be in voice chat. So just give me a second here.
Encounters Shattered Wastes, as it says at the kind of top of the page, it's a cooperative or solo mode, which is like, I think, very big board game about slaying monsters, slinging spells, and surviving magical corruption. And I know that it's kind of hard to listen to a sales pitch if you're a viewer, so that's really, you can see it's wrapped in this JRPG aesthetic. I am a massive fan of the 16-bit pixel art style, and basically I said to myself, if I were to make a JRPG turn-based board game, what would that look like, and how would it be fun to play? And 90 minutes is a really important part of the game for me, because obviously, as JRPG fans, we like a long playtime, but for board gamers, a lot of the fantasy offerings that are out there in solo or otherwise, like the Gloomhavens of the world, if you're familiar with that, are these big campaign.
I own it.
Yeah,
it's
they're these
so long.
They're these massive campaign boxes that it's like 8 million hours of gameplay. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I really wanted a a more bite-sized experience, something that you can just say, you know what, like, hey, play this game with me. Like, pick a hero. Let's beat up a bad guy and call it a day. You don't have to fight all 8 heroes back to back, though that is one of our stretch goals, which is like a boss rush mode. But the last thing that I wanted to mention is obviously I'm inspired a lot by the Soulsborne series for their environmental storytelling and the way they tell, kind of, they allude to story. And the Shattered Waste is a very similar sort of thing. I'm not shoving story in your face, but I am alluding to a lot of things. And the story that unfolds on the table, I want you, the players, to kind of connect the dots and make up a narrative for, right? As the
Right.
gameplay unfolds. None of the characters have names; they just have their classes, like Lancer or Slayer or a Rith Magician, and like the only kind of lore in the game is that you're traveling in this wasteland called the Shattered Wastes, which is this corrupted magical place. The magic has been broken and untamed, and the wastes are spreading, and nobody knows why. So we're, as the heroes traveling in the waste, whether it be for more power or whatnot, and we come against these very powerful enemies. And um, we, the longer we're in the wastes, gain a lot of power, but if we gain too much too fast, we will shatter. And so all characters have two forms, like their heroic form and their shattered form, where they look more evil, they look more tainted, if you will, but they gain a ton of power. But at what cost, right? They can succumb to their corruption and just turn into a denizen of the wastes. So that's sort of the overview of the game. I won't get too much into the mechanics, but it is, there are a lot of things that make you feel like a lot of mental exercises and puzzles that you will solve in the game that you'll find that you would solve in a JRPG, in terms of battle mechanics, in terms of like, okay, if I have this resource, should I use this magic? Should I use this ability? What will that do to the boss? What are the repercussions? Should I be in the front line, the back line, that sort of stuff?
Right. And it's funny because like you can tell like immediately just watching the board itself, like whenever you told me like hey, like I made this game and it's JRPG inspired and stuff, I could tell like right away just by the design of the board, the way the characters were placed versus the boss, the kind of pixel art characters and boss design, even the name of the classes, like you mentioned, like Lancer, which is very reminiscent of Dragoon. A Red Magician, which Jack points out in chat, is basically reminds me of the calculator in Final Fantasy Tactics. Like
Yeah. I mean,
there's
I love a good math wizard, man. I love a good math
sure,
wizard.
yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, and you can tell like the Slayer, like even the design of the character kind of reminds you of Cloud. Like it's obviously not Cloud, but like it's kind of that archetype, like the dude wielding like a giant two-handed sword, and so it's super awesome. Like even watching you play like the first game, like reminded me of those kind of boss battles from those times, like having to kind of, like you mentioned, like make decisions like, oh, this, like at my turn, what do I want to do? Do I want to try and healing my friends? Like, do I want to kind of move around, try to kind of damage the boss, or like maybe remove some threat, like that kind of stuff. It's really, really, really interesting. It's like it caught my attention right away, and as a JRPG fan, so I can even imagine like if you're like even like a bigger fan than I am of JRPGs, like probably you'd go crazy about that kind of game. So it's very, very well done. Like honestly, like
I appreciate that.
I was really, really positively surprised. And
And one of the reasons I was so excited to come on the stream was because, like, you'll have an appreciation for a lot of the little hidden things in the game, the little
right,
nods, and you already have like called out some stuff that feels very homagey. I don't have really anything that is straight, like, well, I mean, like ripped off is like a very harsh term, but there are intentional homages, but as much as possible I try to put my own twist and my own flavor into things so it feels familiar but not the same.
right, and like yeah, and you can tell like for example, like you didn't put in like calculator, and it doesn't work exactly like the one in tactics, but
Right.
it kind of reminds you of that by seeing Aerith Magician. Also amazing name, by the way. Like whenever I saw it, I was like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah, it's that was one of I don't hit a home run often, but the Arithmagician is a home run. He's just this old orc or whatever. Like you don't even know if
Right.
it's an orc. It's like this very old, like something that normally wouldn't be really good at math, you'd think stereotypically, but when he's shattered, his shattered ability is called divide by zero, which doesn't make any
Oh my
sense at
God, it's
all. But
so
it's just
good.
that's the sort of like JRPG tongue in cheek camp that I wanted to put in there
Right.
because like I don't want it to be too serious. I always find the Dark Souls series to be like very, very, very serious a lot of the time, but you have to sprinkle in like the hilarious campiness in there somewhere just to create that levity.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So Jack says the tabletop simulator integration is seamless, and I really have to agree. I didn't mess around with it myself, but like watching you play and just like moving stuff around and things, like it just seemed to work so well. I was surprised because like I did try to play Gloomhaven at some point on the tabletop simulator, and sometimes like the like where you move your character doesn't quite match what's on the board, and your character kind of ends up being like in between two tiles or whatever, like it's just kind
For
of
sure.
wonky. Like I don't know how that works, like how one does include that into like tabletop simulator. Like did you spend a lot of time doing that, like or is just like
Oh
a thing you
yes.
just import some stuff and it just works right away, or
No, I had no idea what I was doing. So for me, I had to do a lot of. There's no scripting in this. I used all the tools that are already in Tabletop Simulator, but there are a lot of
Mhm.
snap points and a lot of like a few external elements that made by other creators I put in there. For the most part, though, I kind of had to figure it out over the course of a couple of years, slowly tuning it, slowly making it better, adding more functionality to it, and it is the I I feel very strongly that if people are able to try it for free, other than like owning Tabletop Simulator, they'll feel a lot better about buying the physical game. So everything that's in Encounters, the box that you can get, uh, in the physical version on Kickstarter, you can find on Tabletop Simulator. I'm not paywalling. I'm not hiding anything. Like, if you are someone who doesn't like board games and doesn't want to own the physical box, that's totally fine too. Like, play it on TTS, have a good time. Like, I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. I was kind of wondering, um, what was the impact of having like a free version essentially of a game that you worked on, being available for everybody, versus like trying to raise money for like a Kickstarter thing? Because like one would assume that, like ideally, like in a capitalistic world, you'd want people to buy the physical product versus like playing
Sure.
it for free. So it's kind of interesting that your philosophy is like, well, if you're enjoying the product, then you're kind of enjoying my work, and thus
That's what
I'm
it is.
happy,
And
basically.
I obviously, I, you know, this board game's been a passion project of mine for the past 6 years. It's something I'm taking very seriously. It's something I care a lot about, and I want to succeed. But I also, work in the film industry as well, and I very much prescribe to the fact that, like, if you look at the hard data, m- most of the people who quote unquote pirate games or pirate movies or end up having an experience for free, if they enjoy that experience, the data shows that there will be a return to the creators in some way. They'll support the creators in some way, they'll buy the product if they like it. If you create an accessible way for people to experience something, they're happy to pay money for it if that's something that they enjoy, because there's a whole psychology around it and all that. I've worked hard in this game and I want people to experience it in whatever way they can. If they're able to do it for free on TTS, that's cool. But I think that a tabletop experience, Encounters on the table with friends, is, for me, it's a little more fun because there's something tactile about a board game. Moving cubes, rolling dice, picking up the standees, moving them around, picking up the cards. That's the fun element of a board game that you get. Or else Encounters, I could have tried to learn how to code and made it a mobile game, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 So that was actually my. I had another question about that, but first, just touching on what you said about the more tactile feeling. I've actually had this issue myself. Like I've been trying to get people together to be able to play board games, and it's been really difficult because of, well, I mean, the pandemic happened, and and now it's like everybody's in their own bubbles, and it's been harder for me to be able to get people to come to my place and just like get board games going, like Gloomhaven and stuff, especially because they're so long. So like having this kind of option that I can just like bring this literally anywhere with me and just like sit down and play for like 60 minutes and just we had fun. And then, you know, if everybody's having like a great time, we can bring it back next time and just do another battle or something. Like it's kind of neat to have something that's, you mentioned that before, but like very, very fantasy, that is also kind of very rapidly plug and play, and then you can kind of move on and do other stuff. Like it's super nice.
I really appreciate that. The thing that is, like you said, great plug and play, but our next stretch goal, if we're fortunate enough to reach it, is it's called journey mode. And in journey mode, you retain your stats after every encounter. If you scroll all the way down, I have a whole blurb in our stretch goals about journey mode. Um, it is a
Getting
long
there.
Kickstarter.
So this is
There's a
it, journey
lot.
mode, right?
A little further. Oh, sorry, the stream's delayed, but yeah,
Yeah, the
journey
stream's
mode.
delayed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a boss rush, but when you defeat a boss, they drop what's called relic cards, and they're item drops, and
Oh, I've
every enemy
seen
has
them.
5 unique ones, and
There they are.
they are just we've got unique art for each one of them, and these are how you're able to kind of step up your game. So between enemies, between encounters, and the travel phase, you're able to expend relic cards to maybe get some of your health back and your stats back as a resource, or you can equip one of them for the battle. And that the more encounters you fight and the longer your team stays alive, the more relics you start to put in the community pool for people to select and pick. And so you talk about, oh, the Soulfire blade, that fits really well on the Slayer, and let's put the resplendent armor on the Ronin, but we don't really need the Betrayer's helm. If we expend that, maybe we can get all of our health back for this fight or something. So that's the more structured, I wouldn't call it a narrative mode or a campaign mode per se. It's just a more structured long-term way to play if you want to go one boss after another.
Yeah, especially once you get to the point where like you have a solid group and like maybe people like really love their characters or whatever, and whatever spells
Yes.
they're using or things. It's kind of neat to be able to have the option to go longer if you want to. So
Right.
I'm really hoping that this is reached as well, because that'd be awesome.
It would be
But
awesome.
like one thing, like so you talked earlier about like the lore and the fact that like it's kind of hinted at, but it's not exactly, you know, like in your face necessarily. But I really appreciate the thought behind like the Soulfire blade, for example, which clearly looks like it's this guy's sword, and just you just
Right.
happen to be able to use it, or like the armor and
Mhm.
for the for this other boss, which I'm sorry, I don't know the names yet.
It's
Um,
the first chosen is the character's name.
okay, and the other guy, like the one with the demon wing, is the same thing
So
too. It's just like
yeah, so
it's
every
him. It's just like shattered,
yeah.
like true form versus okay.
Mhm. Yeah, every
So
enemy has two forms that you fight. They're healthy and they're injured form. And so the first chosen starts out as this very like noble looking hero, and then when we put that enemy into their injured form, they shatter basically and they become this Darth Vader looking guy or whatever. And there's a lot of cool lore hinted about the first chosen. Like this was the first hero to travel into the Shattered Wastes, and his entire it's alluded to that a lot of the enemies you fight were his original party that he like fell to corruption, and this was the last one to do it.
mm,
And if one of my favorite lore things is if you look at Awakened Soul, it's probably hard to read. If you have that item and you would be removed from the board, that relic, you would you replace your standee with the first chosen standee. Um,
oh,
and
no,
Oh, it was you were just on it. It was
no, I
I
was
think
trying
it
to
was
zoom in, but I think like it kind of messed up and
oh, I think
moved
you
me
can open it
around.
in a new tab is usually how you do it. But the
Oh, you're
text
right.
doesn't matter. The text doesn't matter per se, but you get to remove your standee and put the first chosen standee on the board. So narratively, it's like he's come back to help and save you in your moment of need. Like,
Oh, that's so cool.
it's the only time you get to play as the first chosen, which is like I think really really cool, like narratively speaking, because the first chosen's the second to last boss, so you would earn this relic right before you face the final bad guy, and so in the final boss fight, you could have the first chosen come in and try and like redeem himself or whatever.
That's so
So
cool. That's like I just love the themes and like all the design of the monsters and stuff. And like you do touch upon that a little bit in your let's play on YouTube, where like you get into like, like a couple bosses, or I don't
mhm.
know like how many videos you've done so far, but like at least like the first three that I saw. And
Yeah,
you talk about like the lore behind some of the characters and stuff, and I really kind of, and I love the fact that you're always like, well, you can imagine that this might be this or this might be that. Like it's not like kind of set in stone either. It's kind of like more kind of open to your imagination. But like I
right.
like that each boss has this kind of thing you can infer, like from their design, like the kind of story that goes behind it from the design of the character itself.
I've always felt that it was super important for me to understand what I would want the lore to be and design it in that way, but it's okay if nobody knows that. But with enough thought put into it, it'll bleed through enough that you can create your own conclusions and your own stories, right? Like to you, the first chosen might not be this good guy and this hero at all, this fallen hero. To you, the first chosen may just be this horrible person who like took in too much power and is hiding behind this beautiful facade, and you to reveal the true evil once it could be anything you want it to be.
Right, right. And to get back to like the actual design of the game, like you said, it took you 6 years. Like, and I know you like whenever I watched some of the videos, you said you're the game designer, but you also said that you worked with other people making the game itself. So like
Right.
how was that process for you? Because like 6 years is a very long time. Like it's
So it's
did you start on your
it's
own? Did you kind of add people over time? Like what did they do compared to what you did?
so for me it was actually 4 years, and I started this actually originated as one I wanted to see like what a critical role board game would look like. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that
Mm,
Twitch show,
yes.
and I realized a little early on I just decided wanted to make my own thing, and I love JRPGs. And the first 3 or 4 versions of the game were so garbage and bad that they were just scrapped. Like they were horrible, they were unplayable, they were just not fun, they were not good. So I had to really reset several times. I spent 2 years designing games that were bad, that were just not good. And so those were thrown in the bin. And I started over about 2.5 years ago. And this version was the one that actually stuck. And I have a lot of friends that are in the board game sphere that are video game designers or game designers themselves or play testers for other games. And that's where, you lean on people that they try and they give you suggestions, and they say like the in encounters the enemy staggers, and that's how you deal the true damage to it. It's sort of like a tempo thing. That idea came from one of my really good friends who's game designer in Canada, and he was like, listen, it's like you just need something to create a different tempo to the game, or it'll feel the same every single round. And that's where we came up with the stagger mechanic. And yeah, a tons of the cards. There are like 120 ability cards, I think, or something, and or 100 ability cards, and all of those needed tuning, their cost, what they do, all of that. And so we had a lot of people play test and give incredible suggestions on like this card is useless, like you have to do something so that I would be enticed to take it, that sort of thing.
Right. I was gonna say like 120 ability cards. That must be a nightmare to just like trying to balance everything on top of like all the like because there's so many combinations. Like
Right.
8 classes, 120 cards. Each can take three. Like and some of them
Yep.
cycle. Like it's just there's so many different options, and like that must have taken so long just trying to balance everything out.
The spreadsheet that I have is quite robust. Of like math. There's like math and equations and stuff that is not fun, but necessary to make sure people have a seamless experience playing the game. That everything escalates properly.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that kind of touched upon a little bit of everything that I wanted to ask you. Now I know that maybe viewers might have questions for you, so like I'm going to open up the floor. And Carthen, thank you so much for the resub. I appreciate that. You're awesome. Thank you so very much. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions for Ryan, that'd be the perfect time to ask them. If not, you can ask them whenever, and we'll answer them whenever.
Absolutely.
But yeah. And so Jack asks, is there rules to create your own puzzles?
So, in terms of creating your own like puzzles, no, not specifically, because the puzzles. When I say puzzles, it's sort of alluding to your problem solving in game. So the puzzle, when you see it, it'll make more sense. But the enemy puts out these cards on the table, which are a representation of its strength, and every round there's a different sort of thought process you have to go through on how you're going to deal with all those cards, and kind of that's the puzzle. But in terms of what you do get to do every turn is every game is your character draws 8 ability cards, and then you get to keep 3 to use for the game. And so part of the puzzle of the game at the start is picking those abilities, because you have 8 and you're getting 3, and we'll go through this process later. Whether you're playing solo mode, which means you have all your characters that you're trying to create the combos for, or you're playing cooperatively, where you have to talk to your teammate and say, okay, what cards did you draw? What are we thinking here? Do you want to be more support, or do we want to be more damage? Do we want to have any healing? Do we not want to have any healing? Those are the puzzles that I find really interesting, and the great conversations that can be had as you fight these enemies.
Hopefully that answers your question, Jack. And yeah, now that I go down the list, there was another question. So that's a good answer. Perfect. So can you tell me, because that's the thing that I never got to see whenever you were playing, and maybe you can explain it a little better, but like it's because I watched the entirety of the first boss that you did on YouTube, and you actively tried not to get shattered,
Yes.
and because you were trying to avoid that. So I am assuming that means that it's because you did mention that it's like high risk high reward kind of
Mhm.
situation. So like I'm trying to wrap my head around. So so ideally whenever you play, you try not to get shattered, but if you do get shattered, is there a way to get back to your regular form, or are you shattered forever? Like,
So there are a few very rare instances through a couple abilities and a couple of boss mechanics that allow you to do something called reclaiming yourself. And so when you reclaim yourself, you flip your character card back over from its shattered state to its original side. It's like you fought
very
off
Dark
the
Soulsy.
corruption. Yeah, yeah, you fought off the corruption and you've managed to bring yourself back from the darkness. But in terms of like why you try and delay that shattering is because it's such a powerful in-game mechanic that you want agency over. And one of the main reasons you'd ever shatter is because there are very few ways to get health back in the game, your HP. And if your HP ever hits 0, you're only removed from the board at the kind of the end of your turn. So that's when you can take the shatter action and get all your health back. So when you flip over, you get all that health back. And so instead of dying, you're able to um, shatter. And you can be very powerful in this form, but getting removed is so much easier. When your health gets 0, when your corruption is too high, if your threat's too high, you're just instantly removed from the table. And that's very nerve wracking for sure.
Right. So it's almost like you have like two health pools, or
Yes.
two characters basically. So like once the first one is gone and you're in shattered form, it's like that's it. It's your last chance to kind of do anything with what you have. If you reach any of those kind of threshold, like 0 HP or like max threat or whatever, like you're gone. Like there's
Right.
no coming back from that. Okay.
Exactly. And that's the thing that's like nerve wracking about it, because the characters that have a lot of health on their front side usually have a little less health on their shattered side. But some characters are designed to endure a little longer on their shattered side. Like the Arith Magician has the lowest health in the game at 5 on his heroic side. But when he flips to his shattered side, he has 10 health. He becomes like a chunky boy, you know? So it's the choices you have to make are tough ones, and that's the intent of the game, because you don't want to just be like, okay, I'm just going to shatter immediately right off the bat, because doing that means that you're wasting all of those resources from your heroic side.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, I
Well, I
guess
mean,
you could
I
shatter
mean,
right off the bat.
yeah, yeah. I guess you could, but like that's extremely high risk, high reward. Because
Sure.
if the fight lasts too long, then you're gone.
Yeah.
Um. So like about the Kickstarter, like how was the like have you been satisfied with the way like the process has been for the Kickstarter? Like the stretch goal planning and like how fast the project was funded, like all that stuff.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I am over the moon about it. We reached our goal in one day, 12 hours. It was just blew me away, the support for the game so far, and we're close. We're less than $4,000 away from the biggest stretch goal that I could possibly imagine, which is this huge gameplay edition. So, that's that for me. That is incredible. Like we're so close. To getting to, I'm not up on the Canadian money, but it's 50,000 USD, and we're at 40, almost 47,000 USD right now.
Right.
And it's just the process has been incredible. The support's been incredible, and I'm trying really hard to just let people know that this is a game that is worth it. Like, it will give you everything you want out of this experience if you're into this style of play and into this genre.
And I do see like you have some actually super awesome stuff in the deluxe box. That's the one I've been eyeing, like the foil cards and like the acrylic standees, which just looks phenomenal. I'm fairly certain that the acrylic standees are the one that are present in the tabletop simulator version of the game.
Yeah,
Like
they're basically transparent, right? Other than the
yeah, yeah,
pixel
yeah.
art. This acrylic. So I understand that the deluxe edition is expensive, right? That is, I'm not going to shy away from criticism. I'm not going to shy away from the critiques. I understand. I'm not doing what a lot of other Kickstarters do with deluxe editions and trying to shove additional gameplay stuff in there. There is nothing in the deluxe edition that will change the way the game is played. I feel like that's really predatory when other Kickstarters do that, make you pay more money for more of an experience. This is clearly aesthetics, and this all these acrylic standees, you get them for everything that's in the game that you can play, or all the bosses and all the characters. And I'm producing them in the US from an acrylic guy who is top notch, and the quality, this is like as high quality acrylic printing and that you can get, period. It is so, because I needed it pixel accurate. I needed no blurring, no anything. Like, to the pixel, I wanted people to be able to look at these standees and be like, that's 16-bit art. Like, that is incredible. So that's where a lot of that expense is because I'm really investing in how high quality it can be.
And it's funny because you mentioned the fact that like it's expensive, and I would counterpoint that from personal experience, especially on funding board games over on Kickstarter. That's actually cheap. like to me, that's very cheap compared to some of the Kickstarters that I've seen go up on, especially for the amount of stuff you get for the $125 for the Kickstarter price for the deluxe edition. Like
Yeah.
the neoprene playmats, for example, like just that alone. Usually, whenever you buy it like afterwards, it's at the very least it's going to be like $20, like
Right,
just
exactly.
that alone, right? So if you add to that the rest of the thing, right, like the all the acrylic standees, which like the base model looked perfectly fine, but the acrylic standees are where it's at for me personally. They just look incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if you scroll down, you can see more of those photos too. I'm
Oh
working with
yeah, there
Curl
it
Talk
is.
Creatives, and I cannot express enough how incredible these things look. They just are, they're beautiful. And here's the thing: if you don't want to buy the deluxe edition, but you want a taste of that acrylic, we are offering an add-on where you can get like alt arts of them, of the characters that are slightly different pixel art in that acrylic that you could use for whatever you want. But I tend to have them as their reclaimed versions of themselves. So when they come back from that shattered state, they've got like this other look to them.
Oh,
And
that's so cool. Yeah.
yeah. And you can see that like this is not I'm not making a ton on these, but that $20 is sort of the cost for me to get these done. And so the reason I don't have an add-on for like the acrylic elsewhere for the standard edition is because the only way the margins work for me as a company is if I'm able to package them in the deluxe edition with the other stuff at bulk, right? To produce
Right.
them in bulk. Um,
Right. So
but
so basically it's something that like is going to be probably harder to get once the Kickstarter is over, right? Like, so you
yeah, I
might want
mean,
to.
if I right. If I were to offer these on my website, they'd probably be for like $40 for all the heroes and like maybe more for all of the enemies. So it's really selling them individually is a lot more expensive than bundling it in the deluxe edition for sure.
Right. So that's what I mean when I say that. Like, I personally think it's on the cheaper side in terms of prices for backing board games, because of all of those add-ons that you get in the deluxe edition,
Right.
which would normally, if you were to trying to get them, on their own, like piecemeal, would probably be way above the asking price. On top of the fact that some of these, like you mentioned, like the acrylic standees, for example, are not currently planned on being sold separately. So
Sure.
if you
Sure. Some of
don't
them
get
won't be, yeah.
those, then like you this might be the only chance you might have to be able to get those, specifically.
Yeah,
So
I caution on saying anything's Kickstarter exclusive. I understand that
right.
that's like a great marketing tactic, to get people to back. But I just literally don't know. Other than the box, is Kickstarter exclusive, like that beautiful, beautiful box art of the Lancer. But I don't know what will come to the store eventually. I can't guarantee that
Mm,
this stuff will come to the store, or if we'll see in the future.
right.
We'll see.
And so I had another question regarding that. So can you tell me about the stretch goals a little bit? Because the alt art playboard, I'm assuming that all that means is just like just flavor, right? It's just like another.
Yeah, we're tooling with a couple things. Like, so we're thinking the playboard will be double sided. We're trying to see if the neoprene playmat can be double sided too. That's something I'm discussing with my manufacturer.
Mm,
But as of right now, the playboard would just be a different background. That's the throne of the last king. It's one of the locations in the game. But we are messing with the thought of maybe having the board be slightly different on that side, like maybe fewer spaces or more spaces for characters to occupy. But that would require quite a bit of testing, and I am nervous about adding a mechanic that maybe isn't fully tested properly and confusing players and having a bad experience. So
right.
that might be something that I hold off or I don't mess with. And then the location cards, which is just above the alt art playboard, those are just additional difficulty modifiers. So instead of just fighting in the Shattered Waste generically, you can fight in a specific place in the Shattered Wastes, which makes the encounter a lot harder. So if you've kind of figured out the Guardian, who's the first bad guy, who's supposed to be the easiest, and you're like, this guy is so easy, we'll try fighting him in the Grave of Faces and see if he's as easy.
Which, by the way, I freaking love that it's a location you can go to, because having seen the second boss,
Yeah,
and knowing a little bit of the backstory behind the second boss, then knowing that you get to actually play as if you are currently in the Grave of Faces. If you were to face, like,
right.
you can add to that flavor and make you face that monster, but in the Grave of Faces is even better.
Yes. Yeah. And every location card is themed in such a way that you could fight any enemy in the Grave of Faces, but fighting like the boss that's supposed to occupy that space, it synergizes as an additional challenge. So, like, the Bog of Lost Souls is where you would probably find the Eater of Children, which is the witch character, and it really slows you down and hurts your ability to move and debilitates you even more than that character's already debilitating you.
Right. That's so cool. That's such a cool kind of idea of adding like this extra layer of like rules on top of it, but also like just flavor.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, honestly, that's kind of stuff that like kind of gets me going. Like, I freaking love that. Like the idea of like thematically kind of altering the world that you're fighting in, or whatever you're doing, so that it fits with like whatever boss you're facing and stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's part of the lore aspect too. I'm not trying to shove the lore down your throat, but you're like it's all alluded to. It's like what is
right.
the Grave of Faces? And then you see this harvester, this golem that has the Grave of Faces has all these stone people with no face, and then you fight this golem that's got stone faces all over it. That's got an ability called Face Carve. You know, you start to get an idea of like what's happening there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's cool, man. And what about the molded insert? Like, there's no pictures or anything. So I'm assuming, like,
So
help
that
me out
is
here. Like,
a
what's the
So that's in a purely functional upgrade. It's in your game box. It's an insert to store all the components a lot better. I don't have a picture because I don't know what it'll look like yet because I don't know how many
Oh,
components will
gotcha,
end up
gotcha.
in the
Yeah.
game. But the factory will vacuum mold a plastic insert that holds everything a lot better. Otherwise, it would just be like a cardboard insert, you know, and like you would just
Right.
throw everything in the box when you're done in like bags. And that's like fine for a lot of games, but it's less, you know, it makes you want to play the game less when you know there's a lot of cleanup and put away. But if we did unlock the molded insert, so there will be a spot for everything to go, which will make setup and cleanup a lot faster.
Right. And it's a very good point. I just for a second there I was like, I don't remember what insert is because you have to remember that, like, my first language is in English, so
Sure.
like there are some terms and stuff that I'm kind of still confused about, especially when it comes to board games because I don't tend to play a massive amount of board games, like I
Right.
mentioned, because I'm having so much issues trying to find people to play with.
Of course.
But I do remember having to buy something like that separately for Gloomhaven because of the
Oh
fact that it
yeah.
was it was annoying me to have to put everything in small plastic bags. So like
Yep.
having the actual proper inserts for everything is a game changer. Like it actually makes the experience so much better. So I'm
I
glad that
agree.
it's something that was unlocked for sure.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like all these stretch goals would like I wouldn't actually be able to physically produce unless I reach them. Like the for the margins and all of that. Like this is stuff that it's not just carrot on a stick. It's like I literally can't afford to commission all the art for journey mode and get all the extra cards into the game for journey mode unless we reach the stretch goal.
Right, right. That makes sense. Speaking of the art though, like so the pixel art of the characters and then like the box art and stuff or the character art on the actual like class cards, those are they all made by the same artist? Are you doing both pixel and regular, or do you have a pixel art guy and then you have like another artist for like all the rest of the things?
Yeah, so I have a pixel art fellow in Ukraine who's excellent, just incredible. I believe I've got their credits in the bottom. It's at Katsaka Pixel on Instagram. They haven't been as active lately because of world reasons, but
Mm,
they did all the pixel art, did an incredible job on it. I have a different pixel artist for the more higher res relic cards, and then I have two different artists for the kind of quote unquote more proper art. So Elizabeth Kim did most of the character art for the cards, which I don't have any high versions of. Um, the location cards were done by uh, a Bethesda concept artist. I couldn't talk for a second there. And then the box art was done by Frenic Patkos, also known as Drennis Art, and that's the kind of the main art that you see on the boxes was done by him. So I've learned a lot about art direction in the past few years. I've worked with a lot of different artists to make sure that I get a very specific vibe and a very specific feel for the game. But I won't go too much further into that. But I'll just say that I wanted to make sure it was high quality.
it's it works. Like it's not only is it high quality, but like surprisingly, having been made by so many different peoples, it all kind of functions together. Like nothing screams to me as being like out of place or like from another game entirely that doesn't fit with
Sure.
everything else. Like it just all matches super well. Like honestly, you could have told me like it was one person, I would have believed you.
Well,
Like
the thing is, you'll really appreciate this too, like liking JRPGs. I had some critiques on YouTube being like, I don't understand why there's high quality art on the character cards, but pixel art on the table. And it's like any JRPG you play, when you pop open the menu, like they've got
oh for sure.
that higher resolution like character portrait or that beautiful artwork of the characters like in the instruction manual. Like that's a core identifying factor to the game. Like Chrono Trigger, they've got the pixel art, but then you've got the amazing art by I can't remember the Dragon Ball Z artist. I can't remember their name right now, but
Yeah,
that
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, like that's part of the genre is this gorgeous art and then simplifying it into the pixel art.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, if you're, of course, if you're looking at this like outside of the prism of JRPGs or like being inspired by JRPGs, obviously you would probably ask the question, but like as like knowing that that's what it was inspired from, like you see it immediately, like it makes sense, like everything kind of
Right.
works. And before we go to the actual game, there was another thing I wanted to touch on was the it was the music. So I have it queued up and I'll be able to kind of put it on whenever we're playing for the viewers.
Right.
But can you tell me a bit about like the idea of having like an actual track behind whenever you're playing, and why it mattered to you to have that option for people?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a good buddy named Dion Morales, and he runs a Twitch stream for the Star Wars X-wing miniatures game, which is a community I'm a very big part of. And he is a music teacher and a composer in his day life. And I approached him and said, "Listen, I really need some music for this. Like, I need a backing track for people to play the game to make it, but it can't be something that is too oppressive and gets very annoying, you know. It has to be something that it's it it's a very difficult puzzle that these composers have to solve, making battle music that you can listen to for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to and never hate it. Some games are more successful than others, but he did, and then also getting a vibe, like getting making you feel like you're in the Shattered Wastes. So the music's completely free, and it's loopable on our website, and on the Kickstarter you just click on the music tab and it'll lead you there. But we have a standard version and a shorter, condensed, like chip tune version if you're into something more retro, which we're hoping to extend later. And then if we reach, I don't think we'll reach 65,000, but if we do, I'll be able to afford to get individual music for all 8 enemies, which would be really awesome to get their own unique boss music.
Oh yeah, that'd be. It kind of makes me sad that I'm not rich and I can just be like, oh, you know what? Let's just finance. Let's just do it. But because I think that would be so cool to have like a different music for each enemy. But I did listen to the actual track that you have set up for the like the one track that you have, and it just
Mhm.
works well regardless of like however many tracks there end up being. And speaking of that, like so it's currently it's hosted on your website. Is that like, because I'm, like especially like in video games, like we always ends up being like in a situation where like you want to buy physical stuff because in case of like the store goes down and you can't play the game anymore, you can acquire it anymore and stuff. So like in terms of like board games, the music itself is going to be on the web, hosted on the website, and you're going to be able to listen to it there. Is there
You
a
can
way for
down
people
so
to, oh, you can
you
download
can
it? Okay.
yeah, you can download it on the website, and then I will also put the music when as at the right time. It'll be on boardgamegeek as well, where it'll live.
Okay.
So this music will be able to be had eventually by anybody who wants to have it. Um, that being said, it's not under a royalty-free Creative Commons license or anything like that. It's for personal use for the board game. Uh, so that's something to like keep in mind. Like in the metadata, there will be like copyright information and whatever. But it'll be accessible to listen to while you play the game, however you want to do it, even if my website disappears forever at some point in the future.
Right. Gotcha. Um, so no streaming on Twitch. Yeah, but that's the thing,
You
right? Like that was my next question because I'm about to stream that music. So
So you absolutely can stream it on Twitch. It's not like that nobody's coming after you in that way. This would be like, because we're using it for the game, right? It's that we're using it as its purpose is supposed to be used it for. But like if you wanted to take the music and stream it while you were playing like Persona, that or something, that would probably be a no-no. If that makes sense.
that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Um, and so like this, because board games, like, and you've been in that sphere for quite a while now. Like you probably, I've seen many games do that in the past. More and more, eventually, people like release expansion packs, and you can like buy those and have even more content, whatever. Is that something that you would be interested in the future, or were you kind of hoping that this was kind of like a complete kind of package, and then you already have maybe another idea for like another project that you're working on in the future, so you don't plan on maybe doing any kind of upgrades to encounters?
So yes to both things. If the game is liked, this game is complete. Encounters Shattered Wastes is a complete experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, I would like to do a quote unquote standalone sequel game expansion. It's called the Northern Wastes, which is a different Shattered Wasteland on the north side of the continent, like in the snow. It's very snow themed, snow monsters, that sort of thing. And you'd have 8 new heroes, and you'd have 8 new enemies and new mechanics, and you could, it's standalone. You could play Northern Wastes all on its own, or you can mishmash them and combine all this stuff together, and it would be cross compatible 100%. And that would be what I would want to do as my next, foray into this. Is because there are a few mechanics that I didn't get to in this game that I would like to explore. One of which are terrain tokens that go on the board, and you have to navigate in the spaces and that do things. There are some summons that I'd like to maybe consider figuring out and doing. Yeah, I won't go too far into it, but I will give you a little spoiler that one of the playable characters in Northern Wastes, if I get to it, would be the reclaimed Chosen. We already talked about the first Chosen,
Oh,
but
nice.
the reclaimed version of that character would be in that game.
Oh, that'd be
So
so cool.
basically, this character has set themselves off on this journey to you know, get themselves, to redeem themselves. I just sent you in Discord the art for the art for the reclaimed Chosen, and we're just, we're really
Am I
excited
am I
to
am I
hopefully.
allowed to show that, or
Yeah, absolutely,
okay?
show that off. Like
I'll
this is the first time
100%
I'd be
show it.
showing it.
Yeah.
This would be the first time that we'd be showing it in public ever. But if we get the opportunity to do it, um, yeah.
This
So
is amazing.
they've got that sword, the Soulfire blade that we showed off earlier,
Oh, very
and
Dead Cellsy. Yeah, true.
mhm. So we
Oh,
are
sword. Yeah.
really we're really excited to hopefully someday be able to do uh, Shattered North as well, and that's the Reclaimed Chosen. And you know what? I got one more character that if we get, I think you guys might like this one. This might be the fan favorite. Um,
Oh
if
my
we
God.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I'm gonna show that. I mean, if you allow it.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. If we get a chance to do this, like I can't guarantee anything, but we're very excited to show Tracker, our very good boy. You get to play
Oh
as a
my
dog,
God. That's
and the
that's
dog
amazing.
doesn't actually shatter. When the dog would shatter, the spirit of its previous owner comes out to protect it. Um,
Oh, that's so cool.
And then the dog basically immediately reclaims himself because the dog can't ever be bad because he's such a good boy. Um,
Ah, that's so nice.
so
I,
yeah,
I
I
love the
mean,
design too.
oh, he's so cute. Yeah, he's just like a dog that was carrying around his owner's stuff, and then his owner like succumbed to the wastes, but he is continuing on.
Right. Ah, that's so cool. That's really,
Yeah,
really cool.
so that's something like we're doing a lot of really crazy stuff with if we get a chance to do another game. We got to get through this one first. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but I am in the early process of making sure I can kind of get this stuff in order.
It's funny because you mentioned like something you didn't get to explore, which was like the stuff like physical terrains token kind of being placed.
Mhm.
Uh, like you didn't explain to me what it was, but like just from the way you were talking about it, this kind of reminded me of like uh, in Final Fantasy like 14, for example, which I've played quite a bit of.
Oh
Reminds
yeah,
me of like having like a boulder kind of appear and then having to hide behind said boulder to avoid a certain attack or whatever.
yeah.
Um, so is it like am I like in like in the range of what you were thinking about, or like
Yeah, so
sort of ish?
The idea would be every encounter you draw a random card, which would tell you the terrain you're fighting in, whether it be like magma fields or um, crystal spires or anything like that. And then a certain amount of terrain tokens are placed on the board. And then those have positive or negative effects or neutral effects that allow you to do things. So, for example, if you are in the same area as a terrain token, you could choose to have that terrain token removed and not suffer the effects of an attack, just like you're saying, right?
Mm.
And
Right,
so,
right,
like,
yeah.
you could then basically use those to your advantage in the fight. But then other ones might be really bad. Like if you end your activation in a magma field, you lose two HP or something. So they just create these other interesting puzzles. And one of the characters is called the Terra Grafter. It's a character who doesn't have any arms, but she is able to graft the elements of the world onto her body to kind of like have like boulder arms or vine arms or something, and she can actually pick up and move terrain tokens or and do other stuff with them.
That's so cool. That's amazing. I love all of the ideas. Like it sounds like this could like, I don't know, man. There's something about like whenever I started playing Gloomhaven, for example, there's something about the lore of that world that kind of super interested me like right away, and I got into it
Yeah.
more and more, and like with every expansion or standalone expansion or whatever to kind of keep building onto that world. I'm having that same kind of vibe right now. Like when you're talking about like not only like the current game itself, but like there's probably a reason why specifically you chose like encounters and then like, you know, subtitle, which means that, you know, it kind of opens it up to like, well, other locations or other, and you mentioned like the Northern Wastes, and it just, I don't know, it pumps me up to know that there is a possibility of like even more in that kind of world, or, you know, gameplay wise.
Hey
So
man, maybe there's a reality someday where I get to do my sci-fi variant Shattered Space too, you know?
oh dude, oh that would be
Maybe
incredible.
maybe
I
someday maybe someday you get to play as a commando and a magic space wizard fighting down a giant alien. Who knows?
that'd be amazing. I'm a sucker for like sci-fi stuff, like even more so than you know, fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
So for example, like we were talking a little bit earlier about like the difference between Warhammer and like 40K, and like even though I don't know
Yes.
much about either of those, like I still am more drawn to 40K because of the kind of StarCraft versus Warcraft kind of thing. Like I've always been more of a StarCraft person, so like that, anything that's like sci-fi, I'm a huge sucker for. So like whenever
Hey
that
man, I've been
happens, if it does happen, I'm all in. Like,
that's
I'm
dude,
sold. I'm
I
already
hear
sold.
you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I cut my teeth on Star Wars X-Wing. That's where a lot of my design inspiration comes from. I love Star
Mm,
Wars to death. Like I love sci-fi. I love all that stuff. Like I adore fantasy. Like don't get me wrong, like swords and magic like are awesome. But I mean, Star Wars is just space fantasy, right? Like
right. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. That's exactly
that's
what it
fine.
is.